What if I told you that you could meditate and you don't need to close your eyes, you don't need to sit still, and in fact, you can do something creative and active while you do it? All right, so let's get started. So for today, what you're gonna need is some watercolor paper. I'm using a watercolor journal, but just loose watercolor paper is fine. If you're looking for a recommendation, I think a starting point is great with like a Strathmore 300 series or 400 series, something like that. It's decent enough quality, but not super expensive. When you buy something that's really cheap, it's just going to curl and be very annoying to work with. You'll need some water, a round watercolor brush. This is a number 10, but it really doesn't matter what number you use. And in fact, you could use any shape for what we're doing. I use tube watercolors and then I squeeze them out into my palette. You might even be using kids' paints. Anything is fine. You just need two different colors. Yours might be in little dry tabs that you wet, and that's fine. If you want to mix colors, which I think is fun, it's nice to have like a little white plate or something. So you can do that. And then you'll need a towel to wipe your brush. And I like to have a waterproof pen, but we'll let our page dry, so whatever you have will be fine. And then we're just going to dig into a short meditation and intention setting. This is going to help us to set the stage for meditative practice through painting and drawing. With slow drawing and slow painting, that slow practice really is about a mindfulness practice in the moment, so that we are paying attention through the senses to what we are feeling, right? So we're feeling the pen in our hand. We're noticing the texture of the paper, the temperature. We're feeling the back of the chair. We're noticing the feeling of our breath. We are hopefully watching as the watercolor sinks into the page, right? So these are all cues through the senses that are going to help us drop more deeply into the moment so that we're meditating with eyes open. And then this is something that when you practice it more and more will start to bleed over into other areas of your life. And that's the other beauty of it. So everything that I offer is an invitation if you want to, just like in a yoga class, if you want to make adjustments or changes to find a bit more comfort, I really invite you to do that. And if you do that, you're doing it right. You don't need to ask. So let's get started. So if you wish, you might allow the eyes to gently close or find a soft point of focus on the table in front of you. You might begin with a nice sigh or a deep breath. Sometimes letting out that sound can be a nice way to begin to engage, noticing what you're hearing. You might be noticing other sounds in your environment, whether in your own home or outdoors. You might be hearing birds or pets or traffic. There's no right or wrong sound. Just noticing this moment. You might also notice where your hands have rested, whether on your legs or the table. Just noticing what it feels like to let them be supported. Maybe noticing your back pressing into the chair. Maybe noticing whether you could invite a bit more comfort in letting go, letting the chair support you. And you might notice the physicality of the breath, where you notice the breath expanding, belly and chest. And then we might take a moment to just set an intention for this time, this creative meditation we're going to be doing together. And so you might allow your own to bubble up, or you can use all or part of mine. I want to use this time to slow down, to be present with each stroke of the brush, with my own breath, and to know that I deserve time to be creative and to feel grounded. So just letting your breath seal in whatever parts of that you want to let in, letting go of anything that doesn't fit for you. I'm going to allow the hands to start to move into a stretch in whatever way feels good and nourishing for your body in this moment on this day. Allowing eyes to gently float open in their own time. And then coming back present to the room. All right, so now we're going to shift our attention, just keeping that sensation of noticing through the senses, and I'll continue to cue you as we move on to our page. So I'm going to use two colors. There's no right or wrong set of colors. I invite you to please use the colors that light you up and bring you a feeling of calmness or joy or whatever it is you would like today. So I am going to use a bit of my Madder Rose. You can see there's not a lot left on my palette, and yet just even as I wet it, it's going to give off quite a bit of color. I think we have enough for this. We're going to find out. If not, I'm going to have to go over and grab my tube. I should have checked this before. Let me just see here. Oh yeah, there's quite a bit over here. I think that'll do us fine. It is amazing how much a little paint lasts. Whenever people tell me that watercolor is expensive, I'm like, no, especially when you work small like I do. If you worked big, I suppose it might be somewhat expensive, but you have to add so much water. I think it's just inexperience that people don't realize how much water you need with watercolor, and so those tiny little tubes seem very expensive. They actually go such a long way. Okay, so we're going to begin, and I've mixed up my colors and I'm moving kind of quickly, so I'm just going to invite myself to remember my intention, slow myself down, right? Even as I'm on my palette, it's just, I'm noticing the smoothness, right? Just seeing, can you invite yourself to just tune in a bit? And I have some pigment on my brush. I'm gonna dip right into the water just to dilute that just ever so slightly. And I'm gonna make just diagonal movements. Let's see, let's find our page and what it's gonna look like. So it's gonna end up looking something like this. So you can see I have a number of diagonal marks. They're really simple. And then I've drawn lines between them in different intervals. So that's what we're doing. So just taking a deep breath, letting it out, and just starting slow and with intention. We're just going to touch the brush to the page. This is going to feel much slower than you ever imagined you would paint. But our purpose is to just get curious about what's happening as I drag the brush and then start to lift the brush. What happens with that pigment and water? Can you slow down that moment, right? So there's this, I notice when I do that really slowly, there's this moment where there's a little bridge of water where I've picked up my brush from the page, but I'm so close that there's this little bridge of pigment between the brush and the page, which is really cool. And I'm just gonna right at random spots. I think that those two marks were a little long for my liking. Let's see if I go shorter. I'm going to run this one off the page, but still moving nice and slow. Just watching those bristles and the pigment to see what it does. And I'm doing all one color to start. Right, just getting curious. What's happening with those bristles? Again, these are a little longer than I like them because I've been focusing on trying to help you focus on that endpoint, especially. I think it's really interesting and intriguing. But you know, you might like some other part of this process too, and that's great. I'm going to cross over the midline of this page because I want it to look purposeful and like I wasn't trying to avoid it. It's all part of the same piece. Right, this mark down here is really faint. That's good. It's interesting variation. Some of the marks might be a little bit more straight up and down. That one's more straight up and down than I wanted. That'll happen. That's okay. If you are enjoying this workshop, you are going to love my free weekly slow drawing workshops. I'll lead you through drawing nature-inspired patterns with simple marks and lines, and you'll see that it's super relaxing. I can't wait for you to join. There's a link right here. And I'm just going to run some of these marks right off the page. Some at the top, some on the side, some at the bottom, so that it feels nice and random. Speaking of random, I'm gonna just come right next to this mark. Because I want some variety. Now I've mixed my two colors. So I've Madder Rose and Quin Burnt Orange, and I've mixed them together here. And again, I'm coming back nice and slow. You can see the way that as the paint gets less, it starts to behave differently. It collects at the end of the brush here until you pull away, and then it pools back in. Just breathing into each moment. Knowing there's no right or wrong way, just a process of noticing how this process is unfolding and the slowness. Right? It's not easy at first for a lot of us. Some people it's natural. For others, it's a real trick because there's so many things in our culture saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, be productive. And if you're not being productive, defined in a very certain way, then it's a waste of time. And that's not seen as a good thing. So we're retraining ourselves, retraining our body to do what's more natural, which is to take some time to be present, to slow down, to notice what's happening in this moment, right? Just right here, just noticing the feeling of the page under my fingers, watching the paint as it gets dragged along by this brush. Noticing when we've got less pigment, more pigment. What's that like? What are you seeing? When you dip straight from the pigment into water, excuse me, what does that look like? What happens on the page when you do that? If you go for a second stroke without loading up more pigment, what's that like when it's drier? And come in with some of my pink. My madder rose, really, technically. The other thing is aesthetically, when I'm going this slow, I have time to notice. Notice what's happening on the page, what I like, what I don't. And then that slows down my decision making too, which in my experience is usually a good thing for me and for students. And it's gentle. Right? And I don't know about you, but I had to learn to be gentler with myself. Right? I'm a naturally more type A kind of person. And so I come by this practice naturally because I need it. So, you know, it's something that helps me soften in a lot of areas of my life. It's a practice. Right? And practices are not perfect. They are what they say they are. And I like to see the natural shapes that the brush makes. I think that's really intriguing. These colors remind me of like a funfetti cake or something, which I enjoy, makes me happy. Right, so I'm just looking at the piece. I am squinting to reduce down the details and see what I think. Like, is it done? Does it need more? We're going to add lines, so you may want to err on the side of less rather than more. But of course, I'm a much more minimalist type artist than a lot of people. So my personal aesthetic is to err on the side of less, particularly where we're going to add lines to the page. But that doesn't make it right. It just means it's my aesthetic. And I'm here to lift up your experience. I'm just giving you a springboard. So if your artist eye sees something else, don't waste your time going, is this right? She's saying to do this. Trust yourself, trust your own instincts and go with that. Or you can always try it the way that I'm doing it first and then go and do it your way. But just write down your idea so that you've got it for later, if that's the road you choose. Or you can do your idea first and mine is here for you, right? It's not going anywhere. So I'm just taking advantage of the screen to look and see if I want to add anything else. And I'm just going to add a bit more orange to this mix. So even with mixing, sometimes I speed up a little, and that's okay. But then when I come back to the page, I try to really get myself to just slow down. Take a deep breath. And squinting. Just see. Just feels like something is needed right there. Now, sometimes as I add something to one place and it's like, oh, well, if I put something there, something else needs to go here. But go slow, because otherwise you can very quickly do too much. Just add a little suggestion of a new one in the corner. Makes, again, I want it to feel random. And I always dry off my brush, rinse my brush, and let it dry flat. I'm a big advocate of really good materials. I literally have so few materials. I use watercolor pen and watercolor paper these days. That's really it, unless I'm paper cutting, and then it's drawing paper, a cutting knife, a mat, and that's it. And I know not everyone, again, is going to be so minimal as me, but you don't need a lot is the point in order to do something interesting. Okay, so we are going to either let this dry naturally or grab a hair dryer and dry it so that you can then start working in with the pen. But you want the page to be what we call bone dry. Bone dry is going to be the way the page feels like on the white of the page where it hasn't been touched with liquid. It's room temperature, right? There's no coolness to the touch. And any page that's got coolness to the touch in one spot where it was wet, that shows you it's not bone dry. All right, so get your page bone dry and then come back for part 2 with a pen. Okay, since I stopped the camera, I had a minute to just consider the composition. I added 1 or 2 marks around here. And then I also want to show you what I did, because it might happen to you. I don't typically do this because I usually kind of work in stages. I just make marks, let it dry, and then a different day, a different project is adding marks in pen. But because I was trying to prep for you, I touched things and then as being like super careless and smudged it. But you know what? This shows the human hand and it may actually add to the page. So we're just going to roll with it. So I have a waterproof pen. Again, just use what you have. But I like to use waterproof pen because then if I ever want to go back and add something else with watercolor, I can, and it won't smudge things. But the whole basis of this pattern is really just so simple. It is, where are we? Right, we're just adding lines between some of these marks, and some of them are longer and some are shorter. There's really no right or wrong or giant rhyme or reason. So we're just going to pick a place that feels good and feels right and keep picking spots that feel right until we're not sure what to do. So this is the first spot that caught my attention. So again, before I even begin, I'm just going to say, okay, wait. My intention is to be present and to go slow and to enjoy these colors and the experience through my senses of touching the page, noticing the resistance of the page against the pen, seeing if I can just go so slowly and then just meet that edge, which is very simple. And actually, let me bring you closer here. And I'm going to refocus this for you in just a minute. Just make sure you're nice and clear. There we go. Right, and to actually tune in through senses, go just from edge to edge, it takes some focus, which is a good thing, because that's what we're after, right? And it takes slowing down. And you deserve this time to be present with yourself. And you can decide at what point, how far down the mark you go or not. Again, there's no right or wrong. We're just kind of making this up as we go along. And now the next right thing I think I want to do is just go from here to here. But again, I don't race to do the next line. I observe the pen in my hand, my breath as it's moving through my body. And that makes me feel grateful for being able to do this practice, to have these beautiful colors, this beautiful paper, this beautiful book. And it's just good to tune into what's in front of us. And I just go slowly. I just enjoy each line. I really like seeing how close I can get these. You might like spacing them out more. And again, I want to just keep repeating, there's no right or wrong to this. It's about indulging what feels right to you. If you do that, you're doing it right. You don't need to question. Now there can be in the beginning a tendency to do what we call the death grip, where you're just gripping that pen so hard, like it's gonna run away. So I like to think about holding the pen like it's a baby bird, right? Like really, really gentle, really delicate. And there are going to be wobbles in your line, and that's not a bad thing. You don't need to try and fight that. That line, that natural looking line, is again showing that the human hand did it, which is really special, especially these days. Right, so you're just going to keep choosing pairs of or triads of different marks and connecting them. And you can do this in parts, you can do this over a couple of days. This is the beauty of it, right? If one day your meditation is doing the marks, another day your meditation is, say, doing 5 minutes of connecting these marks together. And then the next day, another 5 minutes, and the next day, another 5 minutes. And then you always know what to do for your art meditation, right? There's no question. You don't need to wonder. So I'm going to pause the recording, give you a chance to do some more work, and then I'll come back more towards the end, all right? Right, so at some point you're going to come to a place where you start to wonder, like, have I done enough? And in the beginning, it's really hard to know when you're done, honestly. It's a lot of practice, but I also find that taking my piece and holding it up at arm's length, right? So actually holding it away from me, even better, getting up, standing up, and getting several feet away can really give you a lot more perspective on what you're seeing and whether or not it feels done. Now, again, I always say start with less, and then you can always go back and add more. But like, this is the same format, right? Simple marks and watercolor using 2 different colors. And look how differently, let me just find the other one that I was showing you. Where is that? Just trying to not confuse you and show, well, like here's another version of it, right? Where I'm just going between sets of 2 and they're more straight up and down. But somewhere in here is the original one that I showed you. Oh, here it is, right? These translate so differently. And, right, so same basic idea, translated 3 different ways. So, I mean, as you can see, you could play with this for a super long time and use this as your daily meditation. Even if you broke it up into your initial painting and then 5-minute segments or 10-minute segments, that would take you through a good bit of time. And especially if you're, again, cueing into what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're hearing, right? And just keep reminding yourself of those cues. And if it's helpful, come back to the video again and again, whether it's just the meditation in the beginning to get your head set in the right space, or doing the whole thing and just creating together with me. I'm so happy you joined me for that meditative paint experience. Now, I would love to hear from you in the comments about the difference between your experience meditating with your eyes closed and meditating through art. Let us know, and please like and subscribe so you never miss a video, and we'll see you next time. Bye!